Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing an Ancient Gear deck profile. So I'm really excited to show you guys because this deck is an amazing OTK deck that can summon out all sorts of really awesome fusion monsters like Chaos Ancient Gear Giant, which can just close out games. I have all sorts of really cool tech cards in this build for you guys, so without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Again, your name, description, every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing a single copy of Ancient Gear Golem. This card is a key combo piece in the deck that helps you go in for all sorts of extremely powerful fusion monsters, like your copies of Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem. This card cannot be special summoned, but we have all sorts of different ways to get around that, which is really cool in this build. And this card also does piercing damage when it attacks an opponent's monster that's in defense position. I then played two copies of Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon. This card is a really good two of them in the deck. It has an awesome effect that if this card attacks, your opponent's spells and trap cards and monster effects cannot be activated until the end of the damage step. And at the end of the damage step, if this card attacks, you can destroy a spell or trap card on the field, which is a great effect to combo with our copy of Gear Town, because if we pop our own copy of Gear Town with this card's effect, we can actually get to special summon out another copy of Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon to attack again, which is a great effect to be able to use in this deck. I'm then playing three copies of Ancient Gear Wyvern, which is actually the searcher of the deck. If this card is normal or special summoned, you get to add an Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card. Also, you cannot set cards for the rest of the turn, which is not that big of a deal because we're an OTK deck, so we're not usually setting all that many cards in this deck anyway. So this card is a great three of. I'm then playing two copies of Ancient Gear Frame. Ancient Gear Frame is a really good two of in the deck as well, but you only really need two copies of this card. It has a great effect that you can discard one card to add an Ancient Gear Golem or a spell or trap card that specifically lists the card Ancient Gear Golem in its text from your deck to your hand, which is a great effect to be able to use with this card to be able to search out cards like Ancient Gear Fusion directly from your deck to your hand. I then play two copies of Ancient Gear Hunting Hound. Hunting Hound is a really good two of in the deck. It's basically a walking polymerization, which is a great effect for this card to have. It also has a great effect that if this card is normal summon, you inflict 600 points of damage to your opponent, which is a great effect just to do a little bit of burn damage against your opponent. This card is a definite two of in the deck. I have bumped it down from 3 all the way down to 2 for this particular build, but I still really like two copies in my deck. I then play a single copy of Ancient Gear Box. Ancient Gear Box is a really good one of in the deck that actually lets you search when you search this card. It has the ability, if this card is added from your deck or graveyard to your hand, except by drawing it, you can add an Earth Machine type monster with 500 attack and or defense from your deck to your hand, which is a great effect because you can actually search out your copy of Ancient Gear Frame with this card's effect or one of our other tech cards later on in the profile. I then play two copies of Super Express Train. This card is great in this deck because this card has an awesome effect that if all monsters you control are Earth Machine monsters, minimum 1, then you can special summon this card from your hand, which is a great effect on this card to be able to instantly get you an additional monster on your side of the field, so you can link summon into some really powerful cards like Ancient Gear Ballista. This card also has the ability that during the end phase, if this card's in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, then you can target an Earth Machine monster or any machine monster in your graveyard, except another copy of this card and add it to your hand, which is a great effect on this card to be able to add a machine monster back from your graveyard to your hand. I then play two copies of the Theron King Regulus. This card is a great walking negate on your side of the field. It's just an overall fantastic card in this particular deck, especially with how easy it is to summon this card. Basically, all you have to do is target a Theron monster or machine monster in your graveyard, special summon this card to your side of the field, and then equip the monster that you targeted in the graveyard to this card, which is an awesome effect just to get you a 2800 attack point monster on the field that is a walking negate by sending itself to the graveyard. I then play two copies of Infinitrack Anchor Drill, which is the card that is searchable off your copy of Ancient Gear Box because it has 500 defense points. This card is really good because if it's normal or special summon, you can special summon an additional Earth Machine monster from your hand in defense position, except another copy of this card. And it also has a great great level modulation effect that you get to target one of the machine monsters that you control, and the level of both this monster and the monster that you target become the combined original levels of them both. So basically, if I use this card with a copy of Ancient Gearbox, then I combine both of their levels to make them both level 8 to make a rank 8 play, which is a great effect in this particular deck to help us make all sorts of rank 8 plays in this particular build. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, I'm going to be playing a single copy of Theron Disc Coliseum. Theron Disc Coliseum is a really good one-up in the deck to be able to search out our copy of King Regulus from our deck to our hand, which is why I love this card as a one-up in the deck. I'm then playing a single copy of Overload Fusion. Overload Fusion is a great one-up in the deck to help us fusion summon into our copy of Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. By just banishing 4 materials from the graveyard, we can actually summon out Chaos Ancient Gear Giant, but there's a bunch of different cards in the extract that this card can actually summon by banishing the materials from the graveyard, which is an awesome effect. And then play 2 copies of Ancient Gear Fusion. Ancient Gear Fusion is a really good 2-of in the deck because you can fusion summon an Ancient Gear Fusion monster from your extract using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, but if you use an Ancient Gear Golem or Ultimate Pound you control as fusion material, you can also use monsters from your deck, which is an extremely powerful effect that this card instantly becomes like a copy of Shadow Fusion, which is super cool. I then play 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods is a really good 2-of in the deck to be able to send some cards from your deck to the graveyard, like your copies of Ancient Gear Catapult, so that you can get tokens. But this card is a really good 2-of in the deck to send spells and traps from your deck to the graveyard so you get their bonus effects. I then play 3 copies of Ancient Gear Catapult. Ancient Gear Catapult is a great 3-of in the deck. Ancient Gear Catapult has so many good effects on it that it's just a really fantastic 3-of. Now, while you control no monsters, then you can target one face-up card that you control and destroy it. And if you do, you get to special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions, which is how we usually actually summon out Ancient Gear Golem directly from our deck to our side of the field, because it ignores its summoning conditions. This card also has the ability to manage this card from your graveyard and then target a face-up card that you control and destroy it, and if you do, special summon an Ancient Gear token to your side of the field that's a machine, Earth, level 1, 0 attack, and 0 defense, and you can only use one effect of this card per turn, which is not that big of a deal because we're getting a copy of Ancient Gear Golem on our side of the field. That's usually enough. I then play 2 copies of Ancient Gear Fortress. I did bump this card down to 2. You can play 3 copies of it in this deck very easily, but I really like this card as a 2-of in this build. It has the ability that during the turn that they were normal or special summon, your opponent cannot target Ancient Gear monsters that you control with card effects, and they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects either. And your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of your Ancient Gear card's effects. And if this card is destroyed in the spell and trap card zone, then you can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your hand or graveyard, and you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except Ancient Gear monsters. I really love this card as a 2-of in the deck, but I did consider bumping it back up to 3, but bumped it down to 2 because I added in the Theron cards into this deck. I then play 3 copies of Gear Town. Gear Town is a great 3-of in the deck that the only effect we're actually using on this card is when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard, which is usually going to be the copy of Reactor Dragon that we're summoning off this card's effect. This card is a great 3-of in the deck that's easily searchable in this particular build, and it's a really good 3-of to be able to instantly get your copy of Reactor Dragon on your side of the field. I'm then playing a 3-of that we're actually going to play Guess That Card with. This card is a 3-of spell card that I'm playing in the deck that's a really cool tech card in this particular build that we're going to play Guess That Card with, so definitely comment down below what you think this particular card is, and I'm going to reveal it in 3, 2, 1, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So this card is actually 3 copies of a really awesome card, which is Book of Eclipse. Book of Eclipse is really interesting in this deck. I actually took this from my Gaia the Fierce Knight deck profile, and it's really cool because it changes all face-up monsters on the field into face-down defense position, which is a great effect in this particular deck because you're trying to OTK and inflict piercing damage to the opponent with your copies of your Ancient Gear Golem and your Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. So this card is really cool to change all the opponent's monsters into face-down defense position, then go into all of our plays and OTK the opponent by attacking into their face-down monsters. This card really works really well in the deck because it either forces a negate or it flips all of their monsters face down, and it's almost a better Dark Ruler No More in this particular deck. I then play 3 copies of Urgent Schedule. Urgent Schedule is really good to help us swarm the board, because if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon a level 4 or lower and a level 5 or higher Earth Machine monster from your deck in defense position, but their effects are negated. And you cannot declare an attack the turn to activate this effect, except with machine monsters. Usually you're setting this card to your side of the field and activating it during your opponent's end phase, which is one of the few cards we actually set in this deck. So, that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 3 traps, and that's going to be 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. This could be any 3 hand traps that you want to play in this particular position. I just really like Infinite Impermanence because it turns off your opponent's monster effect, and it's a really good disruption against the opponent. You can also set this card on your side of the field to lock down an entire column for spells and traps, which is a great effect on this card. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. This card is a crazy powerful OTK machine that has an awesome effect that just takes 4 Ancient Gear monsters to summon out this card. It must be fusion summoned and cannot be special by other ways, and it's unaffected by spell and trap effects, and your opponent's monsters cannot activate their effects during the battle phase. And this card can attack all monsters that your opponent controls once each, and if this card attacks a defense position monster, it inflicts piercing damage to the opponent, which is a cool effect on this card that it just does piercing damage. And with the copy of Book of Eclipse, it's almost like an Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, which is really cool, but with piercing damage. We then play a single copy of Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem. This card is super easy to summon and just takes a copy of Ancient Gear Golem plus 2 more Ancient Gear monsters to summon out this card, and it also does piercing damage, which is a great effect. I then play a single copy of Ancient Gear Megaton Golem. This card is just a really good boss monster to summon to your side of the field that takes 3 Ancient Gear monsters to summon to the field. This card is really neat in the deck, which is why I play this card as a one-of. I then play 2 copies of Ancient Gear Howitzer. Howitzer is a really interesting card, and I really like this card because it actually does burn damage, and it's unaffected by all other card effects. And during your main phase, you can inflict 1,000 points of damage to your opponent, which is a cool effect on this card, but you can only activate that effect once per turn. And if this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions, which can be your copy of Ancient Gear Golem, which is really cool. But this card just takes any 2 Ancient Gear monsters to summon it out to the field. The only downside of this card is it is actually Earth, which means you can't summon it with Overload Fusion. I then play a single copy of the Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. Gustav Max is a really good one in the deck just to do 2,000 burn damage to the opponent, and it's pretty easy to put 2 level 10s on the field. And then playing a single copy of Juggernaut Lieb. Lieb is a really good one of the deck because you can make it on top of your copy of Gustav Max and just go in for game with this card, especially since it gets absolutely massive in this deck, and it's just a fantastic card overall. I then play 2 copies of Ancient Gear Ballista. Ancient Gear Ballista is a really good 2-of in the deck. It has some really good effects that it takes 2 Earth Machine monsters to make this card. And if this card is Link Summoned, then you can add an Ancient Gear monster or a Gear Town from your deck to your hand, which usually you're adding the copy of Gear Town off this card's effect. It also has the ability you can target 1 spell or trap card that you control and 1 face-up monster that your opponent controls and destroy those cards on the field, and then change an opponent's monster's attack and defense to 0 until the end of the turn. And the cool thing is you can actually pop Gear Town with this card's effect to special summon out a Reactor Dragon directly from the deck, while also dropping an opponent's monster's attack points down to 0 and their defense points down to 0. We then play a number 97 package, which I'm playing a single copy of number 97, 1 copy of number 38, and 1 copy of number 100. These are very interesting in the deck, and I really like these cards overall because it either lets me summon out a copy of a Spell Negate or a 9,000 attack point monster to help me OTK the opponent. And then play a single copy of Dingirsu because on summon it sends a card that your opponent controls to the graveyard, and it doesn't even target, which is a great effect. And then finally, I play a single copy of Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. Zeus is really good because it board wipes the field, and it's just a fantastic card to clear the way for an OTK. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Ancient Gear before, I highly recommend trying it because it's super fun to be able to just summon out your copy of Chaos Giant to your side of the field and just go in for game, especially with that awesome tech card, Book of Eclipse. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and there's soon come our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next videos. See you later, guys.